Personal Lapse Savings Fund and the requirement budget forms. And that will be presented by the Department of Justice and the Office of Legislative Counsel. Amendment 1 to the agenda. Did you hear me then? Can you hear me?
Vice Chair Smith?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, Sheena. With that, Ramon, if you would lead us roll call vote.
Chairman, roll call vote for the agenda. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Raymond Smith votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote?
I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Honorable Amber Kenneth-Karate, how do you vote?
Senate Delegate Amber Kenneth-Karate, and I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you, Shadeja. Honorable Amber Kenneth-Karate votes green. Honorable Elmer Pupigay, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Elmer Pupigay votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote?
Delegate Brown votes green. Yeah.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Chairman, we have 5 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing, and chairman not voting. Chairman?
Thank you for that roll call vote. We do have 5 in favor, 0 opposed. We have accepted our agenda with 1 amendment. With that, moving along to the next item, which would be A, is a report from the Office of Management and Budget, along with Navajo Nation Department of Justice, regarding the Personal Lapse Savings Fund. So we do have Mr. Dominic Bial. Are you on the line this morning? I believe we do have representatives from the Office of Management and Budget who would be providing this report.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I thought it was the Department of Justice and the Legislative Council.
Office of Management and Budget, who's on the line there?
Mr. Chair, this is Lynette.
Lynette, okay, if you would contact Dominic and let him know that we need him on the call this morning regarding item A on our agenda.
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, thank you for that. With this, Joshua, if you would provide us with some input on item number A, the report. Navajo Nation Department of Justice.
Chair, this is Kristen Lowell at the
Legislative Council. Ms. Lorraine Tapahi.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, this is
I believe Kristen Lowell's on the line. I'd like to have her speak first, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you for responding. It seems like everybody's going about and doing their own thing again. Office of Navajo Nation Department of Justice.
This is Kristen Lowell. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I had some trouble being heard. So all I can say at this point is what I referenced last week when the committee met. And so the issue was that the 3 branch chiefs agreement included recommendations. So at this point, the recommendations are that $3 million is to go to, and I'm talking about recommendations to expend money from the Personnel Lapse Fund. So the recommendations include about $3 million to be put into the retirement fund. And then, at least that's how I understand it. I don't know what business unit it's actually going into, but according to the 3-branch chiefs agreement, as I'm reading it, it is for, it reads to the retirement plan for, it says for increasing costs. And I'm not sure what that means. The other issue is at this time, the recommendation is $3,019,319 allocated to cover the FY21 general wage adjustment for the 3 branches. It was reported last week that the branch chiefs did this, and it was considered that the general wage adjustment, because it's going for general wage adjustment, it was an approved use of the Personnel Lapse Fund. So it's maybe a subtle distinction, but last year's personnel lapse is the prospective or upcoming year's personnel costs. So the general wage adjustment is something that historically has been voted on by council. So it's not something that, and I'm talking about for the upcoming year, fiscal year 2022. So it's not something that the programs budget for. It's something that council will approve as part of the comprehensive budget legislation. And you'll recall from last year that there was a lot of discussion as to what the percentage should be, if there should be any general wage adjustment, if there should be a higher percentage for the people earning at the lower levels. So that is something that happens at council. The other thing that has been typically done with the Personnel Lapse Fund is it's a way for council to fund unmet needs, those things that haven't been budgeted. So what we've done is BNF will, at the end of their hearing, they will look at the list of unmet needs that is compiled by the Office of Management and Budget. And then from there, individual delegates have selected certain things that they would like to fund. From there, the comprehensive budget legislation gets drafted. BNF votes on it. It will go next to NABI and then to council. So there's opportunity at NABI and council for delegates at the other standing committees to make any changes that they see fit. They can do that by motion second and vote of NABI or Navajo Nation Council. So that's why this year is just a little bit different, because we haven't seen this happen in the program budget, in the Oversight Committee budgets, that is. So this is happening at BNF, but it also has to be happening at all of the other standing committees, because as we saw last week, there was a memo to the division directors instructing them as to how much their apportionment was for, we'll call it the general wage adjustment from 2021. Okay, the way I'm thinking of that, that's more of an unmet need. It's going to be something that requires a waiver by council. So it doesn't fall squarely within the use of the Personnel Lapse Fund as governed by Council Resolution CF 0711. It is an unmet need. And I'm happy to answer any questions the committee members have regarding that. Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you for that information, Kristen. And therefore, before I defer to the committee, Mr. Dominic Vial, are you on the line?
Mr. Chair, no, he's not. He's still at division director's meeting. This is Lisa with OMB.
Okay. He issued a memo August 6th. Are you aware of that memo?
I believe I am. Let me see if I can get a copy of that real quick. I can't seem to find my copy right now. Yes, I'm aware of the memo.
Okay. Are you able to provide information regarding that memo to the committee, Budget and Finance Committee?
I believe it was already given to, I believe the information was already given to Peggy because it was sent out from Peggy. What are you talking about? The general wage adjustment allocations? Chair?
Well, the content where it's a report item now, and we would like the committee, we need to get information from OMB as far as what, how they view this issue here.
Oh, that was part of the FY22 general fund budget allocations that we issued from OMB that had the president and vice president's signature on it, and that had the breakdown of the general wage adjustment allocations, Chair.
Chair Henio, this is Peggy.
Okay.
Can I speak?
Without Dominic, I don't think we're not going to get anywhere with this explanation from OMB.
Chair Henio.
We do have Office of Legislative Counsel on the line. Mr. Pai, if you feel comfortable to weigh in on this subject.
I do have a few comments. I concur with Kristen. I just wanted to point out that in Mr. Bial's memo, he states in item F, the personnel lapse / GWA allocations would apply to 2001 personnel expenses category amounts for the designated programs. What he's saying, as I understand it, is that the $3,019,319 is going to be used strictly in a personnel expenses category. So that appears to be acceptable to OMB, and it's acceptable to Office of Legislative Counsel as well. I don't see anything in the Appropriations Act that would prohibit using the FY 2022 budget amount to pay an FY 2021 general wage adjustment. It looks like it's something that's being done for the first time, but I don't see anything, as I said, in the Appropriations Act that prohibits it. The other thing is that in the resolution that approved the BIM, the Budget Instructions Manual, Resolution BFJN 2121, as Mr. Bial points out, Budget and Finance Committee has already accepted and supported the 3 branch chiefs' recommendation for using that $3,019,319 for the FY 2021 general wage adjustment. The resolution accepted the 3 branch chiefs memorandum that laid out the $3 million. The only thing that is concerning is the moratorium that was implemented in resolution CF 0711. And that resolution would need to be waived by the council when the comprehensive budget is being considered by council. Because of the language in CF 0711, the moratorium on future proposed budget revisions from general funds personnel accounts. So that's all I have to say is just for the committee to understand that there would need to be a waiver of that resolution. And so I would like to turn it back over to Kristen if she has anything further to add after I've made my comments now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that input, Ms. Sapahi. Before I go back to the Budget and Finance Committee, Peggy, did you have a comment?
Yes, I did, Chair. The memo that was sent from OMB was emailed to the committee at 3:45 p.m. on Friday. So should be it's basically just a one-page memo from OMB, and then it has the attachment, which is like 22 pages, where it shows the GWA amounts or the personnel lapse fund, that the allocations to each program by business unit number is listed in that memo that he sent out to everyone. And I sent that out to the Budget and Finance Committee Friday, 3:45 p.m. You should all have a copy. That was my point.
Yes, I have it here open, looking at it. Believe it. Well, let's hear from Ms. Kristen Lowe again, then I'll defer to the committee for questions. Ms. Lowe?
Chair, this is Kristen. Unfortunately, I don't have the memo. It looks like on the email string, it was sent to my old address at OLC instead of my current address at DOJ. So I just need to get a copy of that memo so that I can better understand what OMB's position is.
Chair, I just sent that to Kristen.
I'm sorry, Peggy, but I don't have the memo itself. I see at 7:06, I got budget documents. I got budget documents at 6:59 a.m.
I barely sent it to you, Kristen, just like 9 o'clock.
Here it is. Okay, I've got the memo. Thank you.
Great, you're welcome.
Let me just take a quick look so I can see what OMB's position.
Chairman
Okay.
Kenyo, this is Delegate Crotty.
Okay, well, Kristen is reviewing the memo. Let me establish a motion and a second to accept this report. Is there a motion?
Motion, Delegate Crotty.
Motion by Shinada, Delegate Amber Quiñones Lacroix. Is there a second?
Second by Delegate Brown.
Second by Shinada, Delegate Nathaniel Brown. And with this, Shinada Budget and Finance Committee, the floor is open for questions. I'm going to defer to Shinada, Delegate Amber Quiñones Lacroix. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Henyo. I'd just like to voice my concern that Mr. Bial at OMB did not send this to the committee. And looking at the Friday memo, it was sent to, I know as chairman, it was sent to you and Peggy, and it looks like other chairs of the committee who really have not been part of the discussion or the conversations regarding GWA. So I need to ask Legislative Council, in terms you mentioned that then this would have to be waivered language. And in recognizing that the oversights are the final authority on these budget items, it's not clear in looking at these legislations that waiver language was provided, seeing that that has to be a council action. And that goes back to the point in my concern is these are restricted dollars, and it's not exactly clear how these restricted dollars are being used in some of these budgets. If there's no like salary adjustment identified, I did see something like a merit pay, but my concern is Office of Navajo Tax Commission, their GWA adjustment is the exact amount that they're able now to use dollar for dollar to increase their operating expense. And so how can this committee and the Navajo Nation committees, what needs to be part of the budget that we are sure that the personal lab saving restricted dollars are being used, in fact, for personnel expenses? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that question. With that, so the Budget and Finance Committee, are there any further comments or questions before I defer back to Department of Justice? I'm not hearing any, so with this, Kristen Lowe, now Department of Justice.
Yes, Chair. So looking at Mr. Biel's memo, and okay, so he's saying the branch chiefs decided to recommend for the first time that the personal lap savings be used to cover the FY 2021 GWA cost increase in the FY 22 budget. This helps the programs to budget more efficiently, is what he's saying. I'm not disputing that. What I am saying is last year's general wage adjustment, which is FY 2021, is not, it falls under the moratorium, so it's not a permitted use. Therefore, it needs to be treated as an unmet need, which means it triggers a waiver by council, which is what Laureline was saying. I'm not saying that there's any prohibition to doing this in the Appropriations Act. All I'm saying is this doesn't fall squarely under the exception to expending funds under the general wage adjustment. It needs to be done by a waiver through council. So in the memo where Mr. Biel says the Budget and Finance Committee supported this recommendation in the FY22 budget resolution BFJN-2121, Section 2G, where the same language is used. Okay, but still that doesn't take into account the fact that this needs to be something that is done at council, the waiver that is. So that, I mean, basically that's all I can say. I know this is playing out at all of the oversight committees. So to the extent that they are supporting it and voting in favor and recommending the budget to the BNF committee, I suppose that bodes well for council supporting this usage. But all I can say again is this needs to be a waiver. It needs to be in the comprehensive budget legislation. Chair.
Chair, this is Dana. Can I ask Kristen and Laureline a question?
Yes, Ms. Barba, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My question, and this is really on behalf of the other oversight committees that are meeting today. So Kristen, the way and Laurelyn, the way I understand what you've just reported is that we're going to call it the general, it's hard to refer to it, the general wage adjustment for 2021 that was included in the branch chief's agreement and is now showing up on the budget as an amount that was allocated for the 2021 general wage adjustment. So the way the majority of programs have budgeted that is part of their personnel costs. I'm not saying everybody did, but so far, other than the tax commission, I think we've only come across budgets where it's been budgeted as part of personnel savings. So my question to Kristen and Laurelyn, is that an acceptable way to proceed based on a recommendation that CFO 711 be waived? What I got confused was I wasn't sure if Kristen was saying that it should be moved down out of personnel savings into unmet needs. So if I could get that clarification, we can try to get the oversight committees consistent. Thank you, Chair. I hope I explained my question well.
Okay, thank you for that. The question of Dana to the attorneys. With this, so I'll defer back to Ms. Kristen Lowell. Ms. Lowe? Kristen Lowe?
Can you hear me? Sure.
Yes, you can, Kristen.
Okay, sorry about that.
There you are.
Okay, in answer to Ms. Bobroff's question, the way she articulated it, should the funds be moved into unmet needs? That would be the better, cleaner, clearer practice. The issue is I don't think this came to light until some point Friday, I don't know if it was Thursday afternoon. I think the Budget and Finance Committee voted to approve budgets, and we didn't realize that this had happened. So I don't know who the first budget was, but there could be budgets out there that have already been approved by BNF that have put it in just straight personnel without demarcating that it's a general wage adjustment. So I really don't know what to, I honestly, I don't know what to recommend at this point. I don't, sorry, I don't have a better answer. Sure.
Chair, this is Dana again.
Hold on. Ms. Tapahi, well, before that, Ms. Barba, I believe you're in the same office with Ms. Tapahi. I'm sure you could ask her some questions that you have for her. But back to you, Ms. Barba, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not intending to overstep Ms. Tapaye's representation of the Budget and Finance Committee. I'm just trying to make sure we have some clarity as to how we advise the rest of the oversight committees. And this is what I am seeing. All of the budget took that amount and they put it in their budgets in personnel savings. If we are to change that to unmet needs, we will have to go back and make amendments to every single one of those budgets. And so that's what I am trying to find out the answer to, because that is a huge undertaking. So I am looking to see if we can leave it in the budgets that have already been prepared and in front of the oversight committees, or and that can be dealt with in the comprehensive budget legislation that BNF will recommend. So that's one way to handle it. But what I'm thinking I'm hearing from Ms. Lowell and maybe from Ms. Tapaye is that all of the budgets need to be amended to move that amount from the personnel counts down to unmet needs. So that is my question, and I wish we were all in the same room, but as we're not, we kind of have to deal with this discussion live. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Ms. Barba, for weighing in on this conversation and provide clarity to the committee.
This is Delegate Yell here.
So, but before I go back to the committee, Ms. Lowell, you have any further responses? Then I'll defer back to the committee for further questions.
Thank you, Chair. This is Kristen Lowell at DOJ Tax and Finance Unit. So I think what I'm hearing Ms. Babroff say is that the Office of Legislative Counsel, if they could write a paragraph explaining that some of the funding in personnel and maybe the solution would be to include the allocation from listed out in the memo from the Office of the President and Vice President as an exhibit, and explain how that was used from personnel, the personnel lapse fund, and so that there is a paragraph in the comprehensive budget that specifically reflects how those funds are being used. It's fine as long as council approves it, but I mean, ultimately council does have the ability to make amendments to any and all of the budgets. So, I mean, I think that could work, rather than having to go back and amend all of the budgets, some of which have already been approved. That might be the best practice. It just, the waiver would just have to indicate that how this was done. And so if Office of Legislative Counsel is comfortable with that, then it could work, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barba, Ms. Lowell, and Ms. Tapaye for providing information to the committee regarding the content of this report item. Okay, I'll defer back to the committee. Delegate Jimmy Yo here.
Oh, can you hear me? Good morning.
Oh.
This general wages expense. When I'm looking at it, Navajo Nation 3-branch chief agreement, it's agreed that you like a personal less one to be the branch chief agreement. It's not in there that figures. If I think I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, then Mr. BR can correct me. It could general wages is coming out from a personal net savings from the fiscal year in 2021. It's just like supplemental. Okay. I could end up being because their budget they low $8,000. The budget they personnel that's fund. On the budget, I thought not seeing the shit. I was in Black Mesa coming down at the time when this lot of budget went through. I just I saw the idea. When the Abigan, when the budget, can he thought it not has his general wages. I thought he on the budget. I should not addition to okay, not the kid. A question we can look at based on them on all of the program department coordination. $1,000 is it increased by general wages adjustment because I thought that I has the base of pay and this like example the way legislative council Kajiki legislative office is 256,618 but but these money will be split into pie to each of their account number, the different account number. I have 100,000 should be should look so it's not complicated. It's just that we need to watch out the budget by these numbers of the 3 million not team. That's all together. So about this thing. So yeah, and I kind of understand Mr. Member, Mr. Biel or Member too. I'll be on but we need a good summary report each one of them when we go through this budget. It all I should speak. I should learn. Kudunsa about students to Chair, Vice Chair. Thank you very much. Appreciated for give me the floor. Go back on mute now. Yeah.
Okay, there you go now.
Chair, this
Delegate Jimmy Yeller. With this, I'll defer to Delegate Nathaniel Brown.
Oh, Yate, Chair of Budget and Finance Committee, Ado Shinanda. Ado to everyone that's listening, good morning. From Denahutso, it's a beautiful day here. Went on my walk, it was, the smoke has cleared out some. But I'm looking at the memo and listening to DOJ and our legislative legal counsel. It sounds like, and again, this is a recommendation. And my first question is, well, I have a lot of thoughts going through my head that we want to change this. And if my recommendation would be to go back how we have been doing this for the past, in this 24th Navajo Nation Council is to, I don't know what the thoughts are to my colleagues, if we can put this back into what we have, how we have been doing this historically, putting that back into the unmet needs. I know that in this memo, again, the big word here is recommended. But the way that council has been doing and the Budget and Finance Committee, how we have been working is putting this into the unmet needs. My other question is this the total amount, the 3,019,319 for the, is that just the total amount? And then going into the GWA, and let me see, I'm reading this really quick also. So I'm interested to hear the thoughts of my colleagues. If anything, if when we as Budget and Finance Committee supported this recommendation in the FY 2022 budget in the resolution BFJ and 2121 section 2, we can also resend that. That we currently do not support. I'm looking at the state of the nation, and I'm looking at the unmet needs of the different departments throughout. I've met with, this is also a systemic historical problem with our senior centers throughout Navajo. When I visited Kayenta, they're in an old dilapidated building, that there's a huge need there. I think this is for myself. When I met with them, I said, maybe with the unmet need, this is where we can put some of the funding. That's some of the things that when I met with the senior center, that was some of their recommendation. And of course, there's other organizations that want to tap into these funds. So I believe that they did give forward their documentation to me. I need to look back through my email on this. So that's my first question. That this, and when I'm listening to DOJ, you know, that's historically how we have been doing this, is putting that into unmet needs, and now we are supporting, according to the FY22 last year's budget, to put this into the general wage adjustment for all three branches. So that's what I'm understanding. And for me, I would say if we can put it back into the unmet need, it seems like that would also streamline the process. And there's some sort of confusion that's what I'm listening to the conversation right now, and how this is going to work out. And then there's going to be a waiver later on at the council, and that has to be weighed by the full body of the 24th Navajo Nation Council. So those are my thoughts, Chair. Also, yeah.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Chair.
Nathaniel Brown. With this, before I defer back to the presenters, is Mr. Bial on this call right now?
Mr. Chair, this is Dominic Bial.
So thank you, sir, for being on the line. There are some questions for Office of Management and Budget. It's being posed by the committee right now, so just make sure that you're on the call with us. So for this, I'll defer back to the committee one more time, then I'll come to Office of Management and Budget. I'll get Jimmy over here.
Oh, yes, Chair. Let's hear from Mr. Bial and hear from him. Since Mr. Bial's on right now, so Chair, go back to you now, Chair.
Okay, are there any further questions from the committee before I defer back to Office of Management and Budget?
Chairman Henio, this is Delegate Crotty.
Are you at the floor?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, committee members, and everyone who's helping us. I agree that this conversation and the process should have taken place prior to the budgets being developed, because what I'm looking at, Chair, in the short amount of time is, and everyone keeps relying on the recommendations that BNF passed and that I voted and I agreed on. But Chair, last year when BNF made recommendations to Personal Lapse Savings Fund, that action was taken place not at the committee level. So that action was approved at BNF, but we do not take action on Permanent Lapse Savings Fund until it's in the comprehensive budget. So for example, last year the recommendation was, I forget what the recommendation was, like the GWA amount or whatnot. And so that's where I think my concern is, Chair, that we're moving forward on this pretty restricted account without it being explicitly identified on the budget form. Because when I asked Mr. Bial, where would I see it on the budget form? At that time, at that budget, it did, at general services, it did say, remember it said salary adjustment in 2100. So it was there, salary adjustment. Matter of fact, it was more than what was reallocated. So there's also can be a conversation if the departments needed these dollars, if they had money if they already had money to cover and absorb the GWA. And so I think that's why I agree with DOJ, where it should have been in an unmet need, or it should be clearly defined where the department or the program needed these dollars and how these dollars were going to supplement specifically for that general wage adjustment per the resolution. And so that's the process that I'm hoping will be will be discussed, because right now I don't agree that with the memo from OMB on Friday saying, well, this happened, so now we just move forward and Scouts honor, it's being used for personnel purposes. That has not been my experience how we do things here on Navajo Nation, and I don't think in these conversations that we should move forward without having a discussion on what's going to be the legal remedy to fix this, or if there's a way that Budget and Finance maybe can fix some of these issues while we deal with the comprehensive budget. So this is more of a procedure, I think, in terms of understanding where it's at. And if this is the first time, you know, I reread the OMB report, and I think I know that I felt that OMB would give the guidance in terms of how to correctly proceed with this restricted funding. And unfortunately, I don't see the evidence on these budget forms that have been signed and gone through the process and then here at the committee level. So I do recognize the challenge, what it would take to modify all of those budgets, but there has to be something in place rather than just saying, well, this is what happened and now we move forward. I don't agree with that. And then concern then is if we do that with our fiscal revenue budget that has a long history of financial policies and procedures, then what are we going to be doing when it comes to ARPA and making sure that those monies are fully accounted for? So I think at this time we need to be very careful, dot every I and cross every T. And if we made a mistake, then I'm sure there's a legal way on how to fix that. And I think that's where we're at right now. We're trying to figure out what's the best place. How do we move forward instead of just saying deal with it and let's move on? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that comment. The question too. So this would be for Department of Justice and Legislative Council to think about is what is the legal remedy for budget finance regarding the item that the committee had approved through legislation. I believe that's what I'm hearing right now. So once I defer back to Mr. Dominic Bial, then I'll defer to the Office of Legislative Counsel and Department of Justice to provide a response to this question regarding how we can legally fix what is before us right now. Thank you. Mr. Dominic Bial, thanks for joining us on this call and this issue regarding the language that you sent. And therefore, there's a few questions from the committee. If you would provide responses to that. Mr. Bial, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, DOJ, Legislative Council, and everyone else that's in on the meeting. From last week's meeting at BNF committee, where these questions came up, we were asked, OMB was asked to provide more information on the subject matter, including the report that was used to give the GWA allocations to the individual business units. Because it was said by some of the committee members that they hadn't seen it before. Now, by the memo from the president, he did use that report to make the internal allocations to the executive branch business units. And presumably the same information was used by judicial branch and then the legislative branch as well, because they were given the information, along with all the other amounts on the general fund, IDC, the fixed costs, fiduciary funds, proprietary funds, and so on. So on this case, the GWA allocations, the initial point of view from OMB is that, as I say in the memo, that originally the 3 branch chiefs discussed this, which is where the average $11 million figure came from. That is the typical personal lapse savings fund balance that we would use. Now, Resolution CF 711 is the classification pay plan resolution that puts a moratorium on personnel transfers in order to create the personal lapse savings fund. And the purpose of that fund is to provide a balance sufficient enough to fund an annual general wage adjustment. So that's how it is typically used. However, afterwards, there's a remaining balance. In prior years, it's been used sometimes for retirement because they have costs and expenses that are greater than their budget. And then again, as BNF committee knows, the balance sometimes was given to certain programs and projects in the overall budget resolution. And that required a waiver because some of those programs and projects don't fit the definition of the classification pay plan. In other words, generally speaking, personnel costs, personnel expenses. In fiscal year 21 budget, I think we're all aware that there was $9 million left over from the personal lapse savings balance. And that was given again to a number of programs and services and projects which required a waiver. That was Exhibit K to the budget resolution. Now, President Nez line item vetoed all of that. And part of his reason was that it's deviating from the purpose of the fund. Now, BNF supported that in a prior meeting. There was a directive, if I remember right, originally made by Vice Chair Smith, that fund balance, the personal lapse savings fund balance, should be used as originally intended for GWA, for STEPS, and other related personnel expenses. So when the branch chiefs met, they were informed about all of this, and they said, well, we have this practice of where we give an annual GWA, but the following year, then all the programs have to absorb it, swallow it, eat it within their current budget level. And not all of them can do that. So they have to cut here and there in order to accommodate that, including getting rid of vacancies perhaps, or unfortunately, maybe even layoffs in order to provide the balance to fund everyone else in their budget. So therefore, the branch chief said, okay, if we have a balance sufficient, let's provide the $3,019,000 to the 3 branches and all of the programs by business unit so that they can better absorb that cost in the 22 budget. Now, the $3,019,000 figure that I mentioned came from Department of Personnel Management based on their processing of the 21 GWAs. So that was the recommendation contained in the branch chief's agreement. The B&F committee accepted it and adopted it as well. And so when we got to the budgeting process, we provided that information to the branches, divisions, and the individual programs. So they included it in their budgets. As I say in my memo, on budget form 1, you can see the allocations. Typically, most of the time, it's the general fund, IDC, if they're eligible for IDC, and then the FY21 GWA allowance. So that provides the total amount of money that they operate and budget for in the coming year. Now, some programs got an increase, not from personnel allowance, but the general fund. That's per the purview and discretion of the branch chiefs. They can move funds where their priorities are and maybe eliminate non-priorities or programs or services or activities that are no longer needed. So that's how the budgeting process was done. Now, on let me use the OMB budget as an example. The OMB budget, the grand total is $2.6 million from the general fund, IDC, and then the GWA allowance. Our personnel amount is $2.3 million. So $2.3 million of the 2.6 is personnel. Now, on our budget form 3, which was provided to the committee, it lists all of our positions. It has the budget number, the account numbers, whether they're vacant or occupied, the grade steps, the hourly rates, annual rates, and so forth, all the way. And that's been verified by DPM. They sign off on it. So all of the positions that we have that are occupied includes the GWA that was incurred during the 21 budget year. So in our case, we got 70,000 from the 21. It's all a part of the $2.3 million personnel budget. So that's how we viewed it. I think that's the majority of the other programs as well. Because when you look at their budget form 3s, all of the positions have been adjusted, have been increased to include the 21 GWA. Now it's a cost that they have to absorb and budget for in 22. So that's where the GWA allowance would be applied. So that's the understanding, and that was the rationale, logic, and so on that we used from OMB. Now, I also mentioned that the Personnel Lab GWA would apply to the 2001 personal expenses category. And that includes 2110, which is the regular employees, and then temporaries, then merit, salary adjustment, bonuses, as well as the fringe. All of that's the personnel cost. Now, again, in prior years, the B&F committee has chosen to accept the recommendation of the branch chiefs to provide funding as well from this fund balance to retirement, because they always not always, but many times they have a shortfall. And in those times, it was deemed to fit the purpose of personnel, costs, and expenses. So that's the purpose of the information that we provided. I tried to speak concisely but succinctly, meaning to the subject matter in the memo. And this particular memo went to the branch chiefs as well, because that's where the idea initially originated. And then I copied the other 3 committees in the event that they have similar questions. So far, I haven't heard any. Mr. Chair, that's the information I have at this point. I was at the OPVP division directors meeting earlier. That's why I just got on the line about 30, 40 minutes ago now. And I didn't hear whatever advice or whatever comments have been provided by DOJ and Legislative Council. I know that Friday morning the committee was recommending that OMB, perhaps OOC, and maybe DPM ought to meet with OLC and DOJ to better look at this issue, this question, and see if in fact there's relevance to it. And if so, what is it? And then furthermore, how to deal with it, including potentially, I heard the word waiver. Mr. Chair, that's my report and comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bial, for providing the response to the committee. I'll defer to Ms. Tahi, Office of Legislative Counsel, maybe Ms. Barboff, if she's on the line, regarding the question on this legal remedy.
Thank
Mr. Tahi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is Mr. Tahi. I don't think Dana Barboff is actually on the line right now, but I think the best solution is to recommend an amendment at the comprehensive budget before council, because council would be the one that would be able to do the waiver of the previous resolution CF 0711. So council would need to have to do that anyhow. If we are going to categorize the GWA as an unmet need, then we would actually have to amend everybody's budget at this time. I think one amendment before council would be the best way to handle this. Unless, of course, the committee does want to have, I don't know, I guess a work session or something where this issue can be discussed further in depth. But I think the single waiver before council would be consistent with how Mr. Bial's memo describes what's being done. If the $3,019,319 is general wage adjustments from the previous fiscal year that's unmet because there's no money to pay for it. And we're using fiscal 2022 money to pay for it. I mean, it could simply be treated as an unmet need. And again, that would require the waiver of the 2011 moratorium resolution. So I guess my recommendation would be to simply have one comprehensive amendment that would take care of it at the comprehensive budget when it's presented before council. So that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Pahi, for that response. Ms. Kristen Lowe, Navajo Department of Justice.
Yes, Chair, this is Kristen Mull. Okay, One issue was just raised by Ms. Nakai, and I need OMB's help to make a determination. I just want to make sure we're on solid legal ground moving forward. And give me 1 second. I'm just looking at Title 12, 840A, Budget Approval, Adoption and Certification. This deals with the Oversight Committee and Budget and Finance Committee review and approval. And this is that quirky section that says Oversight Committee recommendations shall not exceed the base planning amount set pursuant to 830H. And I can't tell from the 3 branch chiefs agreement if the personal lapse fund amounts were included in the base planning amounts. So I was wondering if OMB could help out on that, Chair.
Thank you for the input, Ms. Lowe. And so I'll defer it back to Mr. Biel one more time, then I'll come back to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Answering Kristen Lowell's question there. In the fiscal year 22 Budget and Finance Committee Budget Resolution BFJN-21-21, appended thereto is Exhibit B, which is the 3 branch chiefs agreement. And under number 2 is a paragraph on the personal lapse savings fund, which reads, with a projected balance of 11 million, the branch chiefs may make recommendations on use of this fund. At this time, the recommendation is 3,019,000 be allocated to cover the 21 general wage adjustment for the 3 branches. Then it goes on to say 3 million for the retirement plan for increasing costs. So that's the recommendation from the branch chiefs. Now in the B&F resolution itself, at section 2G, paragraph 2, it reads that regarding the personal lapse savings fund, 3 branch chiefs recommend 3,019,319 be allocated to cover the 21 general wage adjustment for the 3 branches.
Chair Henyo, point of privilege. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I cannot hear Mr. Biel's sound. Just went really low.
That's that's exactly what I was gonna say. He's just moving further and further away. Mr. Biel, if you would, we could not hear you as you started drifting off.
Okay, I referred to the branch chiefs agreement, which is an exhibit to the B&F committee FY22 resolution. And I referred to the paragraph on the personal lapse savings recommendation, specifically to 3,019,000 and 358,000 or so. And then I was beginning to speak about the Budget and Finance Committee resolution itself, section 2, paragraph G, where it incorporates the same recommendation. The $3,019,319 be allocated to cover the 21 GWA for the 3 branches. Then it goes on to refer to the 3 million to retirement. So that's where the authorization comes from. Now, the 3,019,358 came from the DPM report that lists every single business unit that incurred this cost. And it even goes further, position by position by position. So that's in the report that was given to the 3 branches and divisions, and now has been provided to the B&F committee as well. That's where the amounts come from, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Bill. So with this response from DOJ, Office of Legislative Counsel, and Mr. Bill, Office Management Budget, defer back to the Budget Finance Committee for any further questions, comments.
Chair Henio, Vice Chair Smith.
Vice Chair Smith, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Henio and Budget and Finance Committee members. This is really interesting where we're headed with this and how it evolved and how we're trying to figure out which direction we're going to go to adjust this. The answer I was waiting for was posed by DOJ, Christian, asking the question, base planning amount. Is this also included in the base planning amount, or is this more than what the base amount was? I think that was the question. I was waiting for the answer on that. I think that will possibly address the fact that there is law saying that we shouldn't go over. How do we decipher this on this additional amount that's being provided for the personal lapse and also general wage adjustment? That's my question, Chair Henio. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair Smith. Back to Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions? If not, I'll defer back to Mr. Biel.
Mr. Chair, committee members, speaking to Delegate Smith's question, the base amount that's established for the general fund, this $3,019,000, in my opinion, would be an adjustment and a revision to the base amount. Now, because it's paying for the regular personnel budget, the budget increases that were incurred during the year because of the GWA, primarily for the GWA. So it's not really any different. So it would become a recurring cost because it's for regular personnel expenses. And it's an effort to use these available funds to cover the difference, the increase. Now, the B&F committee is aware that from time to time during the annual budget process, additional funds might be found to fund other pieces of the budget. Typically, it's the UUFB. Sometimes for other costs. So all of that works out during the budget process. All of the figures would be revised and adjusted to reflect and incorporate whatever the final decisions of the committees, the BNF, and then the council. Finally, in the hands of the president. Mr. Chair, that's my response.
Thank you, Mr. Beal, for that response. Back to the Budget and Finance Committee. You've heard from Department of Justice, Navajo Nation, Office of Legislative Council, and Office of Management and Budget. Are there any further questions or comments?
This is Delegate Yellow here, Chair.
Nanda. You have the floor, Nanda.
Okay, I wanted to make this clear to everyone. There is a agreement that was made to the three-branch chief agreement. The projection was for revenue projections that was $137 million. It's all based on that one. I got interference right here. Telephone call is coming into my place here. I want to make very simple questions to Mr. Bial. What this is, the branch chief agreement is $177,205. Is this part of the $3,019,319? Is this part of it? Also, the other one too, the branch chief, $3 million also be allocated for a retirement plan. I don't think that's part of it. But just to make it clear, Mr. Bial, $3,019,319 is not part of it on this $177,205,000. This is not part of it too, the way I understand. And that $3,019,000 that will be additional, it comes with a final budget will be preparation by department. That will be an add-on. Okay, that's how I understand. So to make Dominic, you need to make it clear, crystal clear to the BNF committee and other departments. $3,319,319 is not part of this. It will be add-on to the budget during the budget preparations. This is how I understand, Mr. Bial. That's my questions, Chair. I hope I make it clear, Chair. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nanda. I'll get Jimmy here for that question. Also, is there any further questions, comments, Nanda, Budget and Finance Committee?
Chairman Henio, this is Delegate Carter.
Yes, Nanda, Delegate Bakari, you have the floor. And I believe Vice Chair Smith or Delegate Elmer Pibigay, I think I heard him after that. So you have the floor, Nanda, Delegate Bakari.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I appreciate the committee and everyone on the call to try to, seeing that this is something new, the first time it's being developed, so I'm trying to also just make sure everybody's doing the best that they can and that there wasn't actual intentional, what's the best word? That there was no intentional try to hide this or cover this. It wasn't even explicitly addressed in some of the directors or divisions reports to the committee prior to the legislation. What I do want to say is so I want to first state by saying I agree that programs need these dollars to cover. What I'm just looking at is making sure we're doing this correctly. So in my reading with CF 0711, which was just provided to all of the committee members, so on my page 3 of 29, the third paragraph said the controller, with concurrence of DPM and the Office of Management and Budget, shall establish a ceiling. I would just request where that memo's at and when this ceiling was established, And please do not refer to the 3-branch agreement, because the 3-branch agreement is just a recommendation. So I need a memo, or I need something in terms of what was provided to the committee to establish this ceiling for personal lapse account. And I do think as a committee, we should have a very frank discussion about the 3-branch agreement, because now I'm concerned that that 3-branch agreement is somehow being taken as a higher authority than what's written in the code or written in our resolutions. That is purely a recommendation, and that's how I see it. It's a recommendation. I'll say that again. It's a recommendation, and so I just want to know then where is this document. So maybe if Acting Controller is on the line, I'd like to ask Madam Acting Controller if she could provide that to the BNF, her memo, her letterhead, what date she provided that. I don't think that it should just be checked off because it's addressed in the 3-branch agreement, which is a recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that question. Then, nomination officer, the controller. When it comes to requesting for response, I'll be calling on the officer of the controller's office. So be ready. Next on down the line was this Shandad Elmer TBK. Or what's up, Vice Chair Smith?
Chair, I'll wait on that response with my sister Doug Crowley asked. I'll wait for the answers. Thank you.
Okay, Sheena. With this, I'll defer back to Mr. Bial, and then I'll defer to the controller's office after that.
Chair, you put me in the queue. This is Vice Chair Smith. Thank you.
Okay. Hold on, Mr. Bial. Vice Chair Smith, do you have the floor?
Thank you, Chair. And that's the reason why I asked about the base planning amount. And apparently, this CF-07-11 does talk about the ceiling. Therefore, how do we correct this whole issue? How do we correct this whole matter? It's Navajo Nation funds that we're dealing with, and yes, we need to do it correctly. I agree with Honorable Crotty on how we approach this, and don't make precedents and just passing it along. And I know that they'll say, well, it was in front of BNF. How come BNF didn't take care of it at the point in time? And they just passed the buck alone, and now it's in NABI, it's in council. I think this is the time that we really take a look at how we can address this accordingly and pass it. And it would be known across the budget hearing that this is how we should be coordinating our additional funding. And I'm glad the way Chiche had presented this. That $3,019,319 that's additional funding. We'll call the amount $177,205,000. AI da bajalya ko dirigi aya ha binato sogi e bakanato asigi ota ntida. Okay, I guess my question, Chair Henio, is if we make this an unmet need, and then that would create departments and divisions to come up with a budget reflecting an unmet need at the amount of $3,019,319. Is that the way I understand this in order to make sure things are in order? Because I hear that this personal lapse one was a recommendation. And the recommendation here is to use this fund at that time. And I think that should have been stressed to the Budget and Finance Committee that they're making a recommendation, which is outside of CF 0711. Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Thank you for that question, Vice Chair Smith. With this, defer back to Mr. Dominic Biel for response.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. First question from Delegate Yellow Hair. He's asking whether the 3,019,319 is it a part of the 137 million, which is the general fund revenue, or the 177 million, which includes the 40 million from the permanent fund income? It's not in either. The 3,019,319 would come from the personnel lapse savings, the balance there. So it's separate from the regular general fund income that we've been using. Now, Delegate Crotty made some comments about this initiative, meaning using the 22 GWA to help pick up some of the 21 personnel costs. Otherwise, we'd have to absorb, swallow, and just eat it somehow. She asked about the ceiling per Resolution CF 0711. When is it coming? I'll let the controller speak more directly to that. But what I would say is that on paragraph number 3 of that particular resolution, it reads, the controller with the concurrence of DPM and OMB shall establish a ceiling for the personal lapse account in the amount projected for the annual GWA step increase or other salary adjustments pursuant to the pay plan. Any excess or surplus funds shall then be deposited to the UUFB. Okay, now in my August 3rd written memo and presentation to the BNF committee, I explained that part, that has not happened yet and won't happen until approximately August 19th or shortly thereafter, when the BNF committee meets in your overall budget hearings. That's when that information will be presented. And that's when the controller, OMB, and DPN will make a recommendation. Number 1, on the projected balance. Now the projected balance is going to have to cover the $3 million for retirement, and then $3,019,000 for this GWA adjustment. So then the final balance will be for the GWA, if any. It depends on the balance that's available. But typically in most years, as we've seen throughout the past several years, it's been more than enough. So we end up with more money. Now, the BNF committee followed the CF 0711. Any excess or surplus would then go to the UUFB at the end of the year, when the year ends and the closeout is done. But there's other language in other resolutions that says funding will revert to the UUFB unless otherwise designated by the Navajo Nation Council. So that's where the language comes from, to use any excess personal lap savings fund for other things. And that's how the comprehensive budget resolution is typically written. Delegate Smith asking about whether, well, he mentioned unmet need, and I'm sorry, as I said, I wasn't in on this discussion from the start, but he mentioned unmet need. I don't, if the thought is the 3,019,319 from the personal lap should be somehow designated as an unmet need, I don't think that's the way to do this, because the result is literally every budget, their planning amounts and so on, have to be adjusted to take out that amount. So all of the general fund budgets would have to be redone, revised. And that's going to be another 2 weeks. And we're already behind on the schedule somewhat. So there was a comment from the lawyers about if it's deemed that somehow this is not fully complying with the with CF 0711, and that waiver language is necessary, well, I'll leave that up to the attorneys. That's their job to advise everyone, including OMB, as to how to handle this correctly. Mr. Chair, that's my answer at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Biel, for your comments and response. Office of Navajo Nation Controller, is there a representative on the line?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Budget and Finance Committee. This is Elizabeth Begay, Acting Controller. The question whether I issued a memo relating to that 3,019,319. I don't recall putting it in writing, but I was involved during the discussions about the problem of programs absorbing the GWA that was approved by the Navajo Nation Council, the previous fiscal year budget. And based on that, then there was a discussion that the personal lapse fund should be made available to cover WA for this upcoming fiscal year 22 budget. Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for that response, Ms. Begay. With this, I'll defer back to the Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions or comments? Peggy?
This is Delegate Yell here. Chair?
Okay, before I defer to you, Delegate Yell here. Peggy,
please. A question.
You have something to add?
I was interrupted, Chair. When did you want me to speak? What did you want me to respond to?
You sent me a text saying that Dana Barbach was requesting for something.
Oh, that is from one of the committee members. Ms. Barbroff is asking for a recess. I'm not really certain why. Maybe she can speak to that.
Okay, I'll defer to her when time comes up. But thank you. Delegate Jimmy on here.
Oh, okay. Quite so. I wanna best about it. Okay. Quite all your spells and then I just kidding. Yeah. I'm quite la. You could all best about it. The branch chief best of that is zogi. Ben hot. Only branch chief yet. Hot zero yet had that. A coha had that. Only 177,205. It's legal so. The very peso initial general fund revenue 22 budget copy had on Nishiki 137,205. A corner line peso sahas so the quay. A co a DK sahas so get $40 million that makes 200 that makes 177 million and $205,000. I should have gained Tabana this kid. Crash, you know, Hana, the shim is a real. It's other on his hold. He got so get or be get a la 3,000,000 a quet a or be get a la not this kid. I should or I should not see it or be get a la. So quite out of zone his hold. Jay Upper husband, a personal less fund, not dagi a what a light or be to the la. Out of $3 million to be allocated for last retirement plan, it did be so that. So what Ella, I could a 6,000 like at I shouldn't such kaipe. Out of the budget I had initially could they come before us. It is so that the department had out of the budget I think it is GWA thought out of that it's Jobinaji kilo at the peso. I thought that has so legislative be question be as in the budget issue. A 256,000 legislative. I'm just running now. Issue 439,000. So there's all that money in there be as in the 3,019,319. About the quality peso budget to not die. Asian be tough. So that's why I thought it has so. I also let the Shares speaker. I'm not say care about not all this end when the budget is actually closed out undesignated reserve fund. We could talk about undesignated unmet needs in that area. Could you add that could a personal expense again? Up has honestly later back in 15 years of push on up that share we could just vote for GWA now. It's very crystal clear to me. I don't have any problem to vote green for this. We got only budget not that area about need only. The branch chief green was had it. Only got there's a deep branch chief had it. Only gave on it as double cut. There's a reason for the branch chief because like for the judicial GK. There's about maybe 12 budget in there for 15,765,782. Again, though, in Shiki, they had to work with 15,765,000. A legislative of 15,732. Executive branch 111 million. So external 3.5 million. Fixed cost 18 million. Down on the chapter administration, non-administrative information 12,006,000. That makes 177,205. JD peso again dollars. She allocated so they can go over or under. Abiga the branch chief had it anikonda. It's proposed name Abiga. She Abiga and RGWA. Let's what all we can. We take care. This is a reasonable. Beneath the share target the ton. I met me shape kid about not all this. Asian alcohol just a put for close area bandit insurance not 24 budget finance committee. So I understand this now. Hunter Baha student Bonnet Johnson yeah. Out of $3 million they need to retirement too. But they need more money just on here besides 3 million. They need about another 17 million for retirement office Navajo Nation Hunter. Actually the unmet needs be thought of a kiddo book close area. Thank you very much, Chair. Then Anigi Go back on mute now.
Augustin, that's the doc. They'll get you Jimmy over here. Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments?
On the spreadsheet, so I'm gonna ask both, see if they
Just a range from
like for the whole
1%.
year.
No, it's fixed. Whenever we contract.
Somebody, please put your phone on mute. We can hear you talk about spreadsheets and stuff.
You're gonna be charging 2%. 4%.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you put your phone on mute? Thank you. Budget and Finance Committee members, any further questions, comments? To know, yeah, defer back to Mr. Biel. Do you have a response? Looks like we are at the tail end of our discussion here.
Well, Mr. Chair, committee members, the acting controller, Ms. Begay, stated that her office did not do a memo on the $3,019,319. That's right. In my memorandum and then prior reports to the B&F committee, as well as the branch chiefs, that figure again came from Department of Personnel Management, Division of Human Resources, and they have it broken down by all of the business units per that report that you now have. So that's the basis for the total, and then all of the corresponding amounts to the individual program business units. And as I said, just to reiterate this, per CFO 711, the regular FY22 GWA, if there's going to be one, that is not ready for discussion yet. That will be done when the B&F committee meets in your overall budget hearings beginning next week on the 19th. And then the following several days. That's when the memorandum from OOC, DPM, and OMB will provide the projected balance minus the $3 million for retirement, minus the $3,019,000 for this GWA allowance, and that balance then will be there for the committee to consider the regular FY22 GWA, if any. See, it's not a requirement that a GWA be provided each and every year, but considerations and factors behind it, I think the committee is aware of this, that the Navajo Nation as a government, all of our classified positions, the great majority of them are lower on the salary scale in compared to our competitors, meaning the states, the counties, the federal government, which is why many times we lose a lot of our staff. And one I could use that you all would appreciate is police officers. Navajo Nation Police, we spend a lot of money in the training academy, recruiting and then training, and then putting police officers out in the field. And it's a dangerous and risky job. And so they have a year probation even before they get their full certification. But once they achieve that certification, and once they have a year or two under their belt, we often lose them to the county sheriff's department, state police, and so on, because the pay over there is better. That's the reason for the GWA, the consideration for it. Mr. Chair, that's what I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Biel. And with this, so I'll defer to Office of Legislative Counsel. Ms. Barba?
Thank you, Chair. I very much appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I had sent out a email just a few minutes ago asking the Budget and Finance Committee to consider taking a recess for, I don't know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes to allow DOJ, Office of Legislative Counsel, OMB, and Controller's Office to sit down and everybody get on the same page on these issues and be able to come back and articulate very clearly to the Budget and Finance Committee the legal positions, the legal solutions, the budgeting solutions. What my listening to the conversations doesn't seem like I don't feel like anybody who's giving really strong, firm positions right now to the committee. And this decision or any decisions BNF makes on these issues today will influence all of the other budgets and all of the other oversight committees. So I'm just hoping that to make sure BNF is very well informed, gets to hear the pros and cons, and actually has a strong affirmative recommendation from your advisors. Thank you, Chair. If, however, if Budget and Finance Committee is comfortable then with what they've heard so far, then I would rescind my request. Thank you.
Thank you for that recommendation, Ms. Barba. So with this request, what's the time limit if the request is honored?
I think I would ask OMB and DOJ to opine in, but I think it can be resolved in 45 minutes.
Okay, thank you. With this, Budget and Finance Committee, there is a request for a recess. So the administrative arm of the council can come together along with the legal arm of the council, Office of Legislative Counsel, Department of Justice, Office of Management and Budget, and the Controller's Office can all meet and discuss what's the issue at hand. That way we would be able to better move forward, especially with the tabling legislations that we've had where this was also an issue. So with this, I'll honor that request for a recess. It's 10:30 now, and we will reconvene at 11:30. That will give ample time for everybody to come together and then provide a good, strong recommendation to the Budget and Finance Committee. So this we'll recess 1 hour to 11:30.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We're going to recess for 1 hour. We will be back on the call at 11:30. Thank you, everyone.